I found another infamous mobster on my ancestry tree. We're distantly related, but he is on my tree. I mentioned this in the last video. And so he's in this picture, and it's actually this guy right here. There's not, being a mafioso, there's not a lot of, at least publicly available pictures available. But this is Cesare Manzella. Now, I didn't have any Manzellas on my tree until I started doing this series of videos. So it started back here. A few weeks ago, I posted this. I found a whole St. Louis neighborhood from the same two towns in Sicily. So if you haven't seen that video, definitely go back and watch. And it turns out they're all from Cinisi, except for one or two that are also from Terracini. I had seen, and then I did, I had the same names, and then I did this follow-up video because as I was doing the research for these, I came across a 1920 U.S. census where the entire block in Manhattan were all from Cinisi, and it turns out that they were related to the families that were in St. Louis. So when I had gone back and I had put a number of Manzellas on the line, the name stuck out. So you got to remember, you got to pay attention to the names. So when I went through, for some reason, I don't even remember why, but I saw on Wikipedia, I saw the name Cesare Manzella. And of course, I was like, hey, Manzella, that. So, of course, I look it up, and that's where that picture is available. It turns out that Cesare Manzella, of course, is from Cinisi. What? So, hey, so there's a maybe he's connected. Now, it did take a awful lot of work, but I probably added almost 1,000 more names to my tree. But he is on my tree now, so you can see here. We'll blow that. Whoa, I'll blow that up right there. He is on my tree. A lot of the public information was actually correct. I was able to get his a number of things for him, including his baptism record. So he did immigrate to the United States. Yeah, fruit dealer. Yeah. Okay. So that's why every time I see fruit dealer, it's not a racist kind of thing, but I see fruit dealer, Sicilian immigrant, not always a fruit dealer.
Like the mafia. Yeah, like the mafia.
That's usually just the cover. And I hate that I was born in Palermo. Yeah, the Palermo province. You gotta put the whole thing there. So he did immigrate. He did start going through and that's his signature there. I started going through the naturalization process, and being a mafioso didn't work out too well for him in the United States. So he was deported back, and he went back to Cinisi. I wish there was more information about that online. He was in the fruit business back in Cinisi. So in Cinisi, he owned an extensive citrus plantation. That's a whole video where they talk about it was a lemon farm where supposedly in Carini was the start of the mafia, but I don't know, but that's for a whole other video. Manzella was described as a violent and bullying individual. He's cunning and has a well-developed organizational ability, which enables him to enjoy an undisputed ascendancy over local criminals and mafiosi. Not only in Cinisi, but also in the surrounding communities, Carini, where mia familia from, Torretta, Terracini. So I thought there was something, at least with mia familia, when my research, that there's something between Carini, Terracini, and Cinisi. So I looked this up, and it turns out they talk about frazione, where that is a type of subdivision of a commune in Italy or Sicily, often a small village or hamlet outside the main town. The town is part of the Palermo metropolitan area, borders with the municipalities of Carini and Terracini, and count the civil parish or frazione of Punta Razzi, seat of the Palermo. Okay, so that's probably why there's so much. When we see these names on the census records, like I mentioned before, where the whole street, you can recognize the names from those towns because they're common to there. And so Randazzo with like mia familia, the main line stayed in Carini, but there were brothers that went to Terracini and Cinisi, and some came back. And I also mentioned that in the last video, I didn't know at the time when I recorded, but I did a small edit. I mentioned how they're very, very fond of the name Faro and Farah in Cinisi. So here you can see Caesar married a Farah. His father is a pharaoh, and if we go back, here in his history, we've got a lot of pharaohs. While I was editing the last video, that Farah is actually the patron saint of Cinisi. So that's why it's just like the patron saint of Palermo, for example, and Carini is Rosalia, which is why Rosalia is the second most common name in Carini, behind Maria. Maria is still more common than Farah, Giuseppe, and Maria for obvious reasons. So I was able to get pretty far back on both the lines, the Cesare Manzella and his wife, Farah Impastato. Interesting about their nephew, I'll get to that. But as you can see, on the Manzella direct line, I was able to get pretty far back. And Cavataio, yeah, that's a common name in Carini. And so, yes, Matteo Manzella, I know we're going back pretty far, does originate. These Manzellas do originate in Carini. So this is really cool. And I will point out that I do have the original records. So as I'm adding, the only way I'm going to add the names is if I can actually have the records. So here, I actually have the 1646 marriage records, which is how I know the parents. So what I'm focusing on is getting the marriage records. And the records for Terracini and Cinisi and Carini, a lot of the Palermo area, really, really, I mean, just fantastic records. So you go to Family Search and you go to the catalog and you can do a search there and you just plug in the city you're looking for. What's really great is that they have an index. So these are not searchable, but they do have indexes. So you can go to the beginning here. There you go. So you do have, so there is an index here, and this is the page number. So it'll be at the top corner. So let's say you go jump ahead. So you jump ahead here and you can go, and in the top corner here, not that easy to see here, 63, but that's how you can go through. So not searchable, but you do have an index to cut down. All the names that I do have on here now, all the connections that I have with Cesare Manzella and his wife, I do have the original records, and I would suggest not putting them on, or don't take the hints at face value. Don't believe the hints. They're not always correct. A little more history about this infamous mafioso. After he went back to, it says that he was deported back to Cinisi in 1947 and became, he was part of the commission. And so he was kind of one of the big bosses there. And I'm not going to go through all this. Living that kind of life and being in what they call in the first mafia war, it's not going to turn out too well for everybody. What happens here, it says that Manzella sided with the Grecos and became the target of the rival faction. Manzella was killed on April 26, 1963. This is pretty, when he was blown to pieces by a car bomb. Pieces of Manzella's body were found stuck to lemon trees at fruit dealer, hundreds of meters from or hundreds of yards, if you're in the U.S., from the crater where the car had been. That's what happened. And we have this picture of him, and there's one other known picture of Cesare Manzella, who met his demise in 1963 with a car bomb. So that's the life.
And I said to myself, this is the business we've chosen. I didn't ask who gave the order, because it had nothing to do with business.
What's interesting then, too, is where it says here, I'll just spend a little bit of this connection. Manzella was an uncle by marriage of Giuseppe Impastato, the anti-mafia activist who was murdered by the mafia in 1978. Unfortunately, he was actually killed in the same manner. It was a car bomb. But he had witnessed, it states that his anti-mafia activity may have been triggered by the brutal murder of Cesare Manzella when he was 15 years old, because he was there when it happened. Peppino was traumatized by the event, saying, is this really mafia? If this is mafia, I will fight it for the rest of my life, which he actually did. What's interesting, because he was related to Cesare Manzella, I was able to get him on my tree. And I was able to get this back pretty far. And it also does go back to Carini, and there's a Farah Randazzo. Okay, so another really interesting connection here. Giuseppe Impastato's father's side. Now, his mother was married to the gangster, of course, Cesare Manzella. And this went back. I saw Amato and DiMaggio. It's got to be good. Santo Amato. So I traced this all the way up here. And we have a Giuseppe Domenica Randazzo. If you see the last video, you know where we're going with this. We got Gaspar Randazzo, and that's the Carini connection on both sides of with Cesare Manzella and his wife's family. Both eventually tie into Carini. So, of course, it's really sad that what happened to Giuseppe. They're also up here on Find a Grave. They did a great. That's him doing. I guess he's protesting against the mafia there in Cinisi. He was only 29 or 30 when he was killed. But there is an interesting connection here. I mentioned I didn't have a Manzella on my tree before, which is what led me to Cesare Manzella. Well, it turns out that the Badalamenti family, through Maria Menino, it turns out that was a connection. They are directly related to Caesar. I'll show you here. We'll go up through there. Pietro Abate married Giulia Manzella. So if we open this up, that's the connection. So through Pietro Manzella, that is Cesare Manzella's direct paternal line. So the Badalamentis that were on the 1920 census, the Salvador Badalamenti, directly related to Cesare Manzella, who was killed in a car bomb. But that only opened up even more. So for the next video, I want to go back. I want to go to somebody else who's in this picture, and that's this man right here. So he was the one that ordered the hit on Cesare Manzella. His name, Gaetano Badalamenti. He was, it's mentioned here that he was a deputy to Cesare Manzella, so apparently had his boss killed. So Gaetano Badalamenti. And he was actually part of the pizza connection. I'll go through a lot more detail in the next video. It was I think it was the longest trial in United States history at the federal court level. Now, is he related to the Salvador Badalamenti that's on that census record? He could be also related to, I don't know, he could be related to Angelo Badalamenti, the musician, the composer that I did a video on. He could be. I have no doubt that he'll easily be on my tree, but how he fits in and who he's related to, I will get to that in the next video.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.